Hey everybody, I'm talking on behalf of myself as well as Evanston Fight for Black Lives tonight. So going off what everybody else is saying with the separation agreement with Erika Storlie, this is a problem that's kind of indicative of things that EFDL and other people, organizations, and individuals have been talking about for a long time as far as transparency. I'm sure this goes back before this, but to me, this is reminiscent of what happened with former City Manager Bobkowitz, who amidst a scandal of racial discrimination, which he lost and cost taxpayers $500,000, he was allowed to leave in a similar way where he could resign. He was allowed to then go on to serve another municipality. I'm not sure what he's doing there, but this is how you get the pattern of a lack of accountability from public officials. The same thing that happened with Chief Cook, where he was allowed to resign and separate. Now we're doing the same thing with Erika Storlie, as everybody mentioned before. But this investigation isn't even finished yet. And I also challenge a lot of the members of this community who don't understand why people are calling for a resignation to really do some deep digging. And I also want to point out that in 2019, Portia Davis came forward as an employee and as a Black woman, and she was ignored when she came forward with allegations of sexual assault and harassment that were rampant not only against her, but also that she witnessed in the city towards her from people who still work for the city. And as a city who said we're trying to be a livable city, we say Black Lives Matter, Me Too, and all that, we thoroughly ignored that when people needed it most. And so I'm hoping that we'll realize these mistakes and then correct them as they need to be corrected.
Thank you very much.
Erika Storlie, your resignation is too little too late. You have failed us, the city staff and Evanston residents. You not only failed to protect the 56 petitioners who brought the lakefront sexual harassment cover-up to light, you also willfully enabled and supported an abusive organizational culture within our city government. Your administration protects abusers while subjecting survivors to humiliating, dehumanizing, toxic environments while demanding they continue work under those intolerable conditions. In June 2020, 1 month before the lakefront petition was shared, you sanctioned an unethical, fabricated sexual misconduct investigation against 3 Black city employees.
15 seconds.
Two who worked in your department and 1 who directly reported to you. When the results of the investigation were unfounded, the employees were systematically dismissed with the same silence, avoidance, and failure to accept responsibility the rest of the city has seen you display with the lakefront case. You stood by and did nothing to protect them as council member Cicely Fleming abused her power of office by demanding human resources staff distort facts and break rules.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Malika Gardner.
Before you start my time, can you hear me through the mask? Okay. A minute is short. It's a lot going on, but I get it. Okay, my name is Malika Gardner. Good evening to City Council. This is my first time speaking in person, but I felt it's time. It's so much going on in our city. First, I want to say, with what happened at the last City Council, me as a woman, and there's a lot, I don't think that there's a woman in this room or watching on the camera on TV that doesn't understand what it's like to be raped, molested, sexually assaulted, and sexually harassed in the workplace. We all have felt that. So in the last council meeting, Alderperson Melissa Wynne, when you took that opportunity, I just knew that you were going to speak to the women because there's already a trust issue.
15 seconds.
There's already a trust issue in this city. You took that opportunity to attack this man with false accusations. And you're an attorney, so you knew the wording that you were using was violent and verbal towards him. He did not sexually assault women. And you know that.
Your time is up.
You know that. There's a trust issue in this town. And if she does not give a public apology,
thank you, Ms. Gardner,
for assaulting him in that way,
thank you, Ms. Gardner,
the trust issue is going to deepen. And I know Bobby wants to pass the TIF, the 5th Ward TIF. If you don't start showing us that there's some control,
thank you, Ms. Gardner,
he will not get that support. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask folks to to cooperate. I know these are difficult issues that cannot be addressed fully in 1 minute, but we need to treat everybody. Everyone needs to be given that time, and that requires each of us to make some sacrifice.
Good evening, everyone. As a grassroots organization that represents a wide swath of Evanston Community Alliance for Better Government, CABG, calls for an open process in pursuit of a city manager who is committed to dismantling policies, programs, and practices that embedded favoritism based on race, class, and neighborhood. The first step of such a process is the removal of the confidentiality clause of City Manager Storlie's separation agreement. The independent investigation report into sexual misconduct allegations should be made available to the public in full, with redactions of personal information pertaining to survivors of the alleged misconduct. Any pre-commitment of confidentiality before results have arrived will only further mistrust. We call on City Council members to remove the confidentiality clause and, if necessary, veto by Mayor Biss.
15 seconds.
I'm not going to have enough to go through the rest of it, but please, fulfill each and every one of your campaign promises, because I went through every single one of your campaign websites, that we are here in order to preserve transparency and accountability in local government. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Bennett Johnson, followed by Denise Barreto, and then Ray Friedman.
Hi all. My name is Isaac Slevin, 3rd Ward resident since I was 2. And so last year, 56 lifeguards, including my neighbors, my friends, delivered a mandate to the city and to council. They said, and I quote, "Apologize directly to survivors, their families, and all lakefront employees for consistently placing underage employees in oppressive, uncomfortable, and close proximity with sexual predators." That is the mandate that the city has had to respond to. But instead, we've seen an agreement, a separation agreement, that leaves us with the city with no possibility to explain why City Manager Storlie is leaving, and with no ability to later explain the role that Manager Storlie had in this situation. So I implore to you, what kind of city do you want to build? Do you want to respect survivors? Do you want to hold city members to account? Do you want to take this opportunity to turn over a new leaf? Or do you want to engage in the same situations that left you in this mess to begin with? So, thank you.
Hi, good evening, council. Here we go. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So good evening, council, alderman, mayor. I just want to echo what Ms. Gardner had said. I'm taken back by how Alderman Wynne, I believe that you owe Alderman Reid an apology. Instead of acknowledging the survivors, you went straight at him with your personal agenda. I think it's unacceptable. And that is no way to lead not only your ward, but be an example to leadership for our community members. It's unacceptable. And what is taking place in 2019 is taking place in 2019. You as a leader need to address what's going on respectfully for our survivors. Thank you.
Steve Wittenberg, followed by Megan Hughes and Bill Johnson.
Hi, Misty Wittenberg, 5th Ward. I'm also echoing Ms. Gardner and calling for council to censure Alderman Wynne, and I've emailed you information, so I won't rehash all of that. I also wanted to touch on one other issue. The city provided that it hired a firm to conduct an independent and impartial investigation of matters related to alleged misconduct of the city lakefront staff. None of that is reflected in the contract, at least the version I received this afternoon. The contract says the city hired the firm to represent the city in connection with the city's investigation. The scope of the representation is redacted as attorney-client privileged or based on off-record conversations with a city's attorney. That city's attorney has informed me explicitly that he does not believe persons who file complaints with the city are entitled to due process or impartiality.
15 seconds.
So my questions are that, is the firm retained regular outside counsel or independent counsel? Is it the city or firm that's investigating? If the latter, is it purely a fact-finding investigation or to provide legal advice in anticipation of litigation? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Megan Hughes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hey, well, thank you. I want to thank this new city council for everything that they've gone through and had really dumped on them by the previous administration. However, I agree entirely with, I want to apologize to Councilmember Reid for the treatment he endured, and also to thank him for being, I think, the only person who's publicly apologized to the 56 women. I did want to ask about this confidentiality statement. I don't know, is anybody willing on the council to say if that is really saying that we will not ever read that report?
15
right now,
seconds.
is anybody willing to say that? No? Okay, I'm asking that because I checked into it with some attorneys and they said it wouldn't hold up at all. So, I also talked with several council members and they said they weren't sure, they didn't think it was a confidentiality clause. So, but all the way through, it's very confusing to read this, and I don't think it should be approved tonight the way it is. So I thank you.
Thank you very much.
Owner, presently residing in California, but care very much about this community, and I do watch city council meetings from afar. And I have been extremely dismayed to see council members disparage in tone, condescending, and just da-da-da-da-da, and blame shifting and focusing Alderman Wynne, who I used to have quite a bit of respect for. And as a mother of adolescent, the same age as these women, I'm stunned at the comments that have been made online and by Pete about how we're supposed to just give people a pass because they've done great things for the city. And Erika has done some really good things for the city, but you don't get a pass. This is an extremely, as Mayor Biss said, and I completely agree, institutional failure.
15 seconds.
But I really would like Alderman Braithwaite and Alderman Wynne and some other people, we elected some of these aldermen. When you condescend and disparage them, you are disparaging and condescending us. We elected them. You are disparaging the people of Evanston. Stop the fact twisting and have some respect.
Thank you.
Resident of the 7th Ward, lifetime resident, and also a member of the Community Alliance for Better Government. And I want to begin my statement with saying the fish rots from the head down. And what we've seen is the previous city council and mayor and the pattern of impunity and disregard for public opinion and for decency in terms of how things were handled, in terms of attacks on Devon Reid is very specific to that. This is a pattern that has to stop, and I'm making a statement to put that down as a challenge. There were children who were assaulted by predators, and they will have perhaps a lifetime of problems with PTSD, if you're familiar with that. It's very serious. You know, if we want to have this progressive city status really stand up and not just be a hypocrisy, you have to withdraw this confidentiality agreement clause, and you have to come clean and stop the rot from the head down.
Your time is up.
Because the only way we're going to have trust with you is if there's transparency, and that ain't going to change. Get the job done.
Thank you very much. So as I was indicating, followed by Elizabeth Drake and then Sabrina Fisher.
As some other folks have said, the confidentiality clause in City Manager Storlie's severance agreement is ridiculous. Mayor Biss, you wrote in a July 22nd Facebook post, quote, "I am committed to full transparency with the community as we go through this process." Well, the community expects you to stick to your word. The people of Evanston need to know what happened on our lakefront so that we can ensure that all those that are held accountable, that all those that are at fault are held accountable. Frankly, it's unacceptable that the agreement as written is even on the agenda. Why does the city staff seem to be operating under the assumption that the report will be kept confidential, especially if they don't know what's going to be in it yet? Lastly, I understand if you have to go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter, but then it is not fair to the public for you to embed other items into the item being voted on.
Thank you
I'm
very
speaking
much.
today on behalf of Evanston 2, an organization of people in the community who are horrified by the allegations of sexual harassment and the city's entirely inadequate response. Tonight, I would like to speak out about the plain language of paragraph 2, the secrecy provision in the Storlie Agreement. The plain language of that paragraph presents any disclosure of information resulting from the promised investigation. It allows no disclosure of a report, no disclosure of an executive summary, and not even the discussion of the results with the public. That's untenable. When this investigation is done, I hope that the council decides to waive all privilege and disclose everything except information about the survivors. But even if the council decides to keep more information than that confidential, the time to make that decision is not now. It's at the end of the investigation. Finally, if a new severance agreement or a modified document is proposed, the council must give the public time to examine it, evaluate it, and communicate with their council representative about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, with regard to the separation agreement with Ms. Storlie, I do not understand the basis for the separation agreement in the first instance. I do not know her. I do not know her work. But I do know, based on reading her employment agreement, that there is a colorable argument that she could be terminated for willful breach or habitual neglect of her duties, and that she is responsible for both supervisory authority over the departments and maintenance of records, which this petition would consider. So I would ask the council to consider eliminating the separation agreement in the first instance. In the second instance, I would ask that the confidentiality agreement or the confidentiality provision be stricken, as many before me have already said. And in the third instance, I would point out, even if we were to proceed with this document as it's drafted, there are some serious drafting errors in it. In fact, that the report is not even defined as a report and therefore needs to be reviewed by City Council before it is signed, as it is inaccurate as drafted. I yield my time.
Thank you very much. And then Misty Wittenberg.
Thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of Community Alliance for Better Government, asking against SP1, asking that you reject the separation agreement between City Manager Storlie and the City of Evanston. At the very least, the sentence that states the report and its contents are confidential and privileged and shall not be disclosed by the city unless required by law must be deleted from the agreement. The outgoing city manager has absolutely no business preventing the report from being released publicly. It's highly inappropriate and frankly suspicious that the city manager, as a condition of her separation, would require that the report be kept secret before it's even written. Presumably, no one yet knows what the report is going to say. Regardless, the decision on whether to waive privilege and disclose a redacted version of the investigator's report is up to City Council, the people of Evanston's elected representatives, not the city manager. Thank you.
The next speaker is Ray Friedman, and after that, when we go to those who signed up online, the first two will be Almardo Bicalo and Kirk Klimko.
Good evening, everyone. Once again, you're making a farce out of public comment. Public comment, once again, is supposed to be a dialogue, creating a dialogue with residents. You've ignored that. SP1 should be a meeting all by itself. If it's important enough to have a recess for you to have your session and then make the residents wait, no. That should be a meeting by itself. By the way, when are we going to continue the TIF hearing that is required by law? We haven't done that. This is not the way the government's supposed to be run. It's supposed to be run for the people, by the people, and of the people. This is not how it's done.
15 seconds.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karen Courtwright, and I've been a resident of the 8th Ward for about 35 years. I had some excellent conversations with lifeguards over the last week or so, and I heard amazingly consistent commentary. Here are the key points. While terribly overworked, they recognize that they are understaffed because of the change in beach access, and they expect things to be better next year. But they were also understaffed last year. One thing that was mentioned by several of the lifeguards I spoke with was that there is harassment that goes on in training, sort of like hazing, that diminishes their ability to recruit lifeguards. People just don't want to put up with that kind of treatment.
15
And the
seconds.
supervisors who are implicated in this kind of behavior are the same as the creepy supervisors in the sexual harassment issue.
Time.
That'll be it for me. Thank you.
Karen Courtright, and then Barbara James.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you so much. I've been a resident of the 2nd Ward here in Evanston for 5 years, but Evanston is also the town where my mother, aunts, uncles, and grandfather were born and raised. So it's always been a place of significance for me. This has felt like a community where we could make some real progress towards our collective goals of racial, social, and gender equity. I'm here today, however, because I'm very concerned that our elected officials are taking us in the wrong direction. So I would just want to make 3 quick points. First, our civic discourse has become incredibly unconstructive, fueled in part by misleading, uninformed, limited, and sometimes incorrect information about city governance that our elected officials do not challenge, clarify, elaborate, or correct. Second, the mandate of City Council is to lead our city through policy innovation and ensure that city staff have the direction and support they need to implement the council's policies. Efforts to micromanage and publicly undermine city staff does little to innovate and set new policies to keep us moving forward, and instead erodes the foundations for trust in this community. And Erika Storlie's resignation is a really major and unfortunate casualty of this trend towards accepting narratives without basic due diligence. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Molly Hartenstein. I'm a 4th Ward resident, and I'm here on behalf of Evanston Fight for Black Lives. The mutual separation of City Manager Erika Storlie is reminiscent of the forced resignation of Police Chief Demetrius Cook just a few weeks prior. Don't get me wrong, EFBL and I have had many problems with these individuals. We're not sorry to see them go. Both of them were obstacles to change the systems of accountability for police and in larger city processes that are so necessary to building community trust, as we can see in the issue at the beaches. Both of them don't see the need for the city to grow and change with the needs and wants of its people. They were more interested in preserving their interests, which is why they chose to accept resignation and severance. They should both leave and be replaced. But when they leave under the veil of secrecy, when the city continues to withhold information important to citizens to protect itself, there can be no accountability for anyone involved, and nothing changes. Instead of using these resignations as an opportunity for growth and to better reflect the needs of citizens, the city has doubled down on its self-serving and self-righteous behavior. Along with calling for the project defunding the Evanston Police Department with the eventual goal of abolition, EFBL has always been emphasizing the importance of government transparency, and we emphasize that now as well. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Best and members of City Council. I'm very concerned about the separation agreement with the City Council. It's about time we start rewarding mediocrity and use those resources to help people who are really in need, like black landlords. Also, do not approve of any 5th Ward TIF plan that did not include citizen participation at the highest levels, which negates everything we want in our community and expedites gentrification. We don't need a bike park in Twiggs. What we need is more transparency. What we need is to throw away that termination agreement with her and get to a city that we elected as a progressive, transparent city, not business as usual. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Mayor Biss and the City Council. I agree with the speakers in terms of the need for transparency regarding the issues that go far deeper than just harassment of a sexual nature, but probably harassment in other ways. Harassers, people who harass willingly or unwillingly, can propagate something and also as a result of it increase hatred. If you're harassed, you hate. If you hate, you cause problems. So it really is something that's intertwined in a system which needs to be fully addressed and not addressed in parts, pieces, or secret. And then the last suggestion is with regard to A16. I fully support a rewrite of A16.
15 seconds.
Okay, considering flooding to protect homeowners, especially low-income homeowners, that Jonathan could speak well in terms of social equity, which is not we're being commended for, but not, and this is a possibility of actually doing something about it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My cameras doesn't seem to be going on, I don't think, but
It's
I'm
on.
talking regarding the separation agreement also, and I'm just saying I would hope that the city will be completely open and transparent with the investigation report, and with the exception of anything that would violate the rights of the survivors and their privacy. We need to know who knew what when, because this is not an issue that's related only to one person. I think there were many people who knew something was going on and didn't step up and protect our children and our other employees, and that needs to stop. Without transparency, there will always be dark secrets, which, to me, they're like a toxic fungus, which grows in the darkness. But we need the light of truth so that the residents of Evanston can have a city that's truly run with integrity and rebuild the trust in our city government. On a less important note, I do want to say, I hope you vote against the A13, the sale of reducing the time notice to residents for the sale of public property, especially since 14 acres of public property is involved in a proposed TIF. But we can talk more about that later.
Time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Bennett Johnson, followed by Denise Barreto, and then Ray Friedman.
Mayor Biss, members of City Council, fellow citizens, I want to talk to you a little bit about public policy and public service. I've been involved in politics more than 7 decades, starting in Los Angeles and working against the daily machine for decades. Public service means just that. You are public servants. And your leadership skills should be based upon your public policy, not your personal policy. And it's important that you realize, one problem, of course, in a group like this is collegiality. You develop relationships, friendships, and
15 seconds.
Influenced by others. So I'm just recommending strongly that you use public policy and public philosophy, democracy as your guide, not what you want personally. Thank you.
Thank you very much.